Humanity had always been seen as small and weak in the vast universe. For centuries, Earth had been a minor player in the galactic stage. While other alien civilizations soared to great heights, humanity was still finding its feet, slowly learning to explore the stars and make its mark in a galaxy filled with powerful empires. At first, the humans had been content with trade and peaceful relations with the other species. They focused on building their own technologies and learning from the more advanced races. But slowly, a sense of injustice began to grow. It started with small things: alien governments ignoring humanity's requests for assistance, pushing human colonies to the side, and dismissing Earth's proposals at galactic councils. The human race, despite its best efforts, was always seen as a lesser species, an afterthought by the other galactic powers. But that was about to change. On Earth, a former military strategist named Ethan Pierce had spent most of his life studying the great battles of the galaxy. He had once served in the military, but had stepped down to become a diplomat, trying to find peaceful solutions to the growing tensions between Earth and the alien empires. However, his time as a diplomat had only confirmed what he feared. Humanity was being used, manipulated, and taken for granted. The galactic empires had no respect for Earth's people, and that was something Ethan could no longer tolerate. Ethan had been to many galactic meetings, and in every one, he had seen the same thing. The humans were ignored, their voices drowned out by the louder, more powerful civilizations. No one listened when humanity spoke about its needs. The humans were treated like a minor species with no real influence, their concerns brushed aside as if they didn't matter. After years of diplomatic failure, Ethan realized that peaceful negotiations wouldn't work. Something drastic had to be done. In secret, Ethan began reaching out to other humans who shared his frustration. He met with engineers, scientists, former soldiers, and leaders from Earth's many colonies. They shared his belief that humanity needed to stop letting others decide its fate. The time had come to show the galaxy that humans were no longer a species to be underestimated. Ethan and his group began working on something no one had thought possible: a new kind of warship, built from scratch using Earth's limited resources, but combined with the best technologies humans had learned from their alien allies. It wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol. This was humanity's declaration of defiance. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. As they worked on their secret plans, Earth continued to suffer. A remote colony, located on the edge of human space, was attacked by an alien fleet. The invaders, part of a large galactic empire that had long controlled that part of the galaxy, claimed it was a routine military exercise. The colony, however, was wiped out in an instant. Families, children, and entire communities were lost without mercy. It wasn't just a tragedy, it was the last straw. The news reached Earth like wildfire. The people of Earth, tired of being treated as insignificant, finally had enough. The governments, which had for so long tried to remain neutral, suddenly found themselves pushed into action. But even as Earth's leaders tried to respond, they were met with resistance from the more powerful empires. These empires, feeling secure in their dominance, saw Earth's anger as a fleeting emotion, something that would burn out with time. They were wrong. Ethan and his group were already preparing to act. They had a plan. An audacious, bold plan. They would not just fight back. They would fight back on their terms, using the human spirit, their ingenuity, and a deep-seated desire for justice. They would build a force strong enough to make the galaxy listen. No more would humans bow to the will of others. The time for weakness was over. The first step in their plan was to assemble a small but elite team of fighters. They would train in secret, using the new warships being built to strike at the heart of the empire that had destroyed the colony. The message was simple: no empire would survive if it thought it could crush humanity without consequence. The work was grueling, but humanity's determination was unshakable. Day and night, Ethan and his team worked tirelessly, preparing for the day when they would launch their first strike. They knew that this mission might be their last, But they also knew that if they succeeded, they would send a message that no empire in the galaxy could ignore. The galaxy was about to witness a shift, an unstoppable force rising from the ashes of oppression. Humanity, once seen as weak, was now on the path to becoming a power that could not be silenced. And the first empire to face this new human force would soon learn that no matter how big or strong they were, nothing could stand in the way when humanity decided enough was enough. The attack on Earth's colony had sparked something deep inside the human race. For years, humanity had quietly accepted its place in the galaxy, always hoping for peaceful solutions. But now, after the loss of so many innocent lives, the idea of waiting for someone else to fix things no longer seemed like an option. Ethan Pierce, the former military strategist turned leader, had known that a time would come when humans would need to stand up, but he never imagined the moment would arrive so suddenly, so violently. As news of the attack spread, Earth's governments met in emergency sessions. The tragedy was fresh, and emotions were running high. The families of the lost colonists were devastated, and their pain was felt across every human settlement. The anger that simmered for years finally bubbled to the surface, and something shifted. People, once silent in their frustration, began to demand answers, to demand action. But while Earth's political leaders argued over how to respond, Ethan and his secret group of allies were already moving forward. They had worked quietly for months, knowing that the first step in their plan would need to be executed swiftly and with precision. Ethan called it the spark, a single bold action that would ignite the fire of resistance across the galaxy. Humanity's warships, though still crude compared to the advanced fleets of galactic empires, were ready. They had been designed and constructed in secret by engineers who believed in humanity's potential. The first test of this new force would be a small but critical strike against the empire responsible for the colony's destruction. The target was clear: a supply depot deep in enemy territory, a vital outpost that kept the empire's military forces running smoothly. Destroying it wouldn't just weaken the empire, it would show that humanity could strike back and hurt them where it mattered most. This operation, though small, would send a clear message to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. Ethan led the mission personally, knowing that it would be dangerous, but he also knew that no one else could do it. The team was small, just a handful of Earth's best soldiers and pilots, all highly trained and fully committed to the cause. The warships they piloted were faster than anything the Empire had expected. They were equipped with technology stolen from allies who had seen the truth in humanity's struggle, and they were ready to make their mark. The night before the mission, Ethan gathered his team. They stood together in the briefing room, surrounded by maps and data. His words were simple, but they carried weight. This is our moment. We strike fast, hit them hard, and then disappear before they even know what hit them. We're not just doing this for us. We're doing this for every human, every colony, every person who has been treated as less than they are. This is the spark, and we will make sure it lights a fire they can't put out. The team nodded, understanding the gravity of what they were about to do. They weren't just fighting to avenge a colony. They were fighting for the future of humanity in a galaxy that had long treated them as insignificant. As they approached the enemy supply depot, their warships moved in silence. The humans knew that the element of surprise was their greatest weapon. They had studied the enemy's patrol routes, the timing of their supply drops, and the weaknesses in their defense. The attack would be swift, and there would be no room for error. They launched their assault with precision, each ship striking specific targets with coordinated attacks. The chaos that followed was something the Empire had not expected. Their ships were destroyed in moments, supply crates exploded in a brilliant flash, and vital systems were knocked offline before the enemy could even react. The humans didn't linger. They didn't need to. They had done their job and disappeared into the depths of space as quickly as they came. The Empire's military forces were left scrambling, confused, and helpless. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. The mission had been a success beyond anyone's expectations. Humanity had struck a powerful blow against one of the galaxy's most powerful empires, and the message was clear. Earth was no longer a passive player in the galaxy. They had just delivered a devastating reminder that they were not to be ignored. But while many celebrated, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The spark had been lit, but the fire was far from finished. The galaxy would respond. Of that he was certain. There would be more battles, more enemies, and more challenges ahead. The Empire would retaliate, and humanity would have to be ready. But for now, they had won their first victory, and the taste of triumph was sweet. In the weeks that followed, messages began to pour in from across the galaxy. Alien species, once hesitant to ally with humans, now reached out. They had seen what humanity was capable of. They had seen that humans were no longer the weak, passive species they had once been. And as the alliance grew, so did the sense of possibility. The galaxy was waking up to a new reality, one where humanity was no longer content to be pushed around. It was a reality where the galaxy's most unstoppable force had just begun to show its true power. Ethan stood at the window of his command center, looking out at the stars. The battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. There was much to do, and many more victories to claim. The universe had just learned one thing: humanity was no longer afraid. The success of the first strike sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Humanity, once overlooked and underestimated, had shown its strength in the most unexpected way. The attack on the Empire's supply depot was more than just a victory. It was a declaration. A message to every galactic empire that humanity could no longer be ignored. And while the humans celebrated their success, the empires were scrambling to react. Across the galaxy, the most powerful civilizations were taken off guard. The attack on the supply depot wasn't just another skirmish. It was a clear sign that Earth and its colonies had the ability to strike where it hurt the most. The news spread quickly, and soon it became clear that humanity was no longer the silent, weak species the galaxy had long thought them to be. But the victory was not without consequences. The galactic empires, known for their strength and power, were not used to being challenged. The response came swiftly, with each empire blaming the others for the incident. Diplomats from multiple galactic factions quickly gathered to discuss how to handle this new threat of humanity. The leaders of these empires saw the human attack as an anomaly that couldn't happen again. They believed that humanity was a fluke, an unexpected force. But they were wrong. Back on Earth, Ethan Pierce and his group were already planning their next move. They knew that the first strike was only the beginning, but it had opened doors they never expected. Messages of support from other species poured in, many offering assistance or forming temporary alliances. Some were simply curious, wanting to know more about humanity and their surprising tactics. Others, however, saw humanity's rise as an opportunity to break free from the control of the Empire. They saw Earth's victory as a symbol of hope. Ethan understood that this sudden attention could be both a blessing and a curse. While the alliances with these new species might strengthen humanity's position, they could also bring complications. The galactic empires would not be pleased with these new partnerships, and the more powerful factions would make sure that humanity didn't gain too much ground. Still, it was a risk they had to take. The next phase of their plan was already underway. Ethan gathered his team again, this time in a much larger room, filled with new faces, leaders from Earth's colonies and ambassadors from the species who had reached out in support. It was a turning point for humanity. The room buzzed with excitement, but also with uncertainty. What would they do next? How could they make sure the fire they had started continued to grow? "We've taken the first step," Ethan said, his voice calm but strong. "But this isn't over. We've shown them that humanity can fight back, but now we need to make sure we're ready for what's coming. They'll retaliate, and we need to be ready. We've already built something they don't understand. A unity between our species. We've seen what happens when we stand together, and that is our strength." He paused, looking around the room, making eye contact with each of the leaders. This is just the beginning. We need to grow stronger, build more alliances, and most importantly, we need to show the galaxy that we can stand on our own. For the first time in a long time, the humans had a sense of purpose. They no longer felt like pawns in a game they didn't understand. They were the players now. The ripple effect of their victory had touched every corner of the galaxy, and humanity was ready to ride that wave to something greater. Meanwhile, the empires were far from ready to accept this new reality. Despite the initial shock of the human attack, their leaders were quick to regroup. The message from their high councils was clear. Humanity was an inconvenience to be dealt with, a minor threat that had to be eliminated before it grew into something much worse. They underestimated the power of the human spirit, and it would cost them dearly. The first retaliatory strikes came swiftly. Small skirmishes broke out across human colonies, designed to remind Earth and its allies who was truly in control. But the humans were prepared. They had learned from their first victory, and now had a clearer understanding of how to move forward. The galactic empires were bigger, stronger, and better equipped, but humanity's greatest strength was their resilience. Ethan, watching from his command center, knew that they couldn't fight like the empires did. They couldn't match the sheer size and power of the enemy fleets head-on. But humanity's strength lay in their ability to adapt, to be creative, and to use their resources in ways that the larger, more powerful empires couldn't even imagine. They were the underdogs, but that was something Ethan had come to understand as an advantage. The humans were unpredictable. The empires might have armies and fleets, but the human mind was something they could never prepare for. As the counterattacks began, Ethan's group put their new strategy into action. The key to victory wasn't just in direct confrontation. It was in guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run missions, and strikes that left the enemy guessing. They didn't need to defeat the empires in a single blow. They just needed to make sure the galaxy knew that humanity wouldn't back down, no matter the cost. The battle for humanity's place in the galaxy had begun, and every small victory was a step closer to showing the universe that Earth's unstoppable force was something no empire could silence. The empires had made one mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and that would be their downfall. The days following the first major counterattack were filled with a mixture of triumph and tension. Humanity had made its mark on the galaxy, but the reaction from the galactic empires had been swift and brutal. Earth and its colonies were not just dealing with angry military forces, they were also facing a political storm. The empires had decided that humanity needed to be taught a lesson, and the lessons they intended to teach would come at great cost. Ethan Pierce knew the war had only just begun. Though the first series of strikes against human colonies had been repelled, the empires weren't going to stop. They were methodical, powerful, and vast. They couldn't let one small, rebellious species threaten the order of the galaxy. For them, humanity's rise was a dangerous spark that needed to be extinguished before it could grow into something uncontrollable. But the humans were different. They had tasted victory and felt something change within themselves. The quiet, submissive species that had once only dreamed of fighting back was now awake. They were no longer just reacting. They were creating their own path. Earth wasn't going to go down without a fight. And the more the empires pushed, the stronger humanity's resolve became. The human military and their allies had begun to coordinate efforts on a much larger scale. Ethan knew that their biggest advantage lay in their ability to think outside the box. They weren't going to defeat the empire through sheer force alone. Instead, they would outsmart them, use their smaller forces, and strike when and where the enemy least expected. The first step was to gather information. Human intelligence officers worked around the clock, infiltrating enemy systems and gathering vital data. They needed to understand their enemies, their movements, their weaknesses, and most importantly, the cracks in the empire's leadership. The humans were starting to learn how to play the same political games the empires had mastered over centuries. Ethan's team focused on one key strategy: divide and conquer. They would find the internal divisions between the empires and exploit them. The galactic factions were not as unified as they appeared. There were power struggles, rivalries, and greed that threatened to tear them apart. Humanity, with its smaller but unified forces, could use these divisions to its advantage. Meanwhile, word of Earth's struggle was spreading. Other smaller species who had been oppressed by the larger empires began to take notice. Some of them began reaching out to humanity, offering support, supplies, or even joining the fight. These species had lived under the shadow of the empires for generations, their voices silenced by the sheer might of these galactic superpowers. But humanity had opened their eyes, and for the first time in a long time, there was a glimmer of hope. Ethan knew the power of alliances. Humans had always been able to bond over shared struggles, and now they had allies who shared that same desire for freedom. He also knew that with each ally they gained, the weight of responsibility increased. These species trusted humanity, and that trust had to be earned. They needed to protect these new alliances as much as they needed to protect themselves. Their survival depended on each other. As Earth's alliances grew stronger, the Empire's attempts to crush the human resistance grew more desperate. The Empires had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, but now they were starting to realize that they couldn't just steamroll through Earth's defenses. The humans weren't just holding their ground. They were fighting back with a strategic brilliance that left the Empires baffled. But despite all their successes, the human resistance was still under immense pressure. The galactic empires had more resources, more troops, and more firepower. But humanity had something that the empires didn't: heart. Humans fought not just to survive, but to prove that they belonged in the galaxy, that they had a place beside the more powerful civilizations. On one of their key missions, Ethan and his team led a strike on an Imperial military base. It wasn't just about taking out the enemy. It was about sending a message to the empires that humanity would not back down. The mission was a success, but it came at a cost. Several of Ethan's allies were injured, and the team barely escaped before the base's reinforcements arrived. It was a reminder that war was never without sacrifice. After the mission, Ethan stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, staring out at the stars. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Every victory made them stronger, but each one also brought the empires closer to retaliating. The cost of this fight was clear. Humanity was in this for the long haul, and there would be no turning back. As the crew worked to repair their ships and prepare for the next phase of their campaign, Ethan's mind raced. They needed more resources, more information, and more support from their growing alliance. They needed to strike before the empires could launch another large-scale attack. But Ethan also knew that they couldn't do it alone. The human spirit was powerful, but they were still a small force in a vast, cold galaxy. They needed the help of their allies, the species who had risen alongside humanity, ready to face the Empire's cruelty. Together, they would have to stand as one. The road ahead would be difficult, and the galaxy would test humanity's resolve. But in that moment, standing on the bridge of his ship, Ethan knew one thing for certain: humanity was no longer a victim. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the empires would learn it the hard way. The situation was growing more complex with each passing day. Humanity had quickly become a force the galaxy could no longer ignore. The Empire's response to humanity's resistance had been brutal, but the human spirit was proving stronger than expected. The battle for Earth and its colonies was far from over, and Ethan Pierce knew that the next move was critical. They had gained ground, but they had not yet won the war. Ethan stood in the war room of his flagship, surrounded by his closest allies. Plans were being laid out for the next phase of the campaign. The empires had underestimated humanity's resolve, but they had also made a grave mistake. They had assumed that Earth's forces were scattered and disorganized. In truth, humanity's unity was its greatest strength, and it was becoming more evident with every successful mission. "Time is running out," Ethan said, pacing back and forth. "We can't afford to wait. The empires will strike again. We need to hit them first." One of his trusted lieutenants, Lieutenant Lyra stepped forward. She was a seasoned strategist, with years of experience leading rebel forces in her own corner of the galaxy. I agree, but we need to be cautious. The empires have vast resources. If we move too quickly, we risk exposing our position and losing everything we fought for. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. I'm not suggesting a full-scale attack. We need to hit them where it hurts, disrupt their supply lines, weaken their command centers, and cripple their communications. If we do it right, they won't know what hit them. The room fell silent as the team processed the plan. It was risky, but it was the kind of bold move they needed. The humans had already shown their enemies that they were capable of striking with precision and force. But this time, they would strike deeper into the heart of the Empire's territory. This wasn't just about defending Earth anymore. It was about taking the fight to the enemy. The next few days were spent preparing. Ethan's forces were joined by allies from across the galaxy, species who had once been oppressed by the empires and were now fighting alongside humanity for their freedom. These alliances had formed quickly, with many species eager to break free from the tyranny of the larger galactic powers. They had seen what humanity could do, and they were willing to take the risk. The operation, codenamed the Great Gambit, was designed to hit the Empire hard. It wasn't just about taking out one or two key targets. It was about sending a message. Humanity wasn't just defending itself anymore. They were going on the offensive, and they would no longer allow the Empire to dictate their fate. Ethan's flagship, the Phoenix, led the charge. It was a symbol of the human spirit, strong, resilient, and unyielding. The fleet was ready, and the first wave of ships was prepared to move out. They had gathered intelligence on the Empire's communication hubs, supply depots, and military outposts. Now, it was time to put that knowledge to use. As the fleet entered the enemy's territory, the tension was palpable. The crew knew that this mission would determine the future of humanity's fight against the Empire. The stakes had never been higher. If they failed, the retaliation would be swift and devastating. But if they succeeded, they would have struck a blow that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Ethan stood at the helm of the Phoenix, his eyes focused on the stars ahead. The plan was simple: strike fast, hit key targets, and disappear before the enemy could respond. They would use the element of surprise, something humanity had learned to master in the past few months. The empires were used to overwhelming power, to brute force. Humanity, on the other hand, had learned to fight with strategy, with intelligence, and with unity. As the ships engaged their warp drives, the crew held their breath. The fleet slipped past the Empire's outer defenses undetected, thanks to the intelligence gathered by their spies. The first target was a communications relay station deep in enemy space. If they could knock out the relay, they would cripple the Empire's ability to coordinate their forces. The attack was swift and silent. The human fleet moved in, launched their precision strikes, and vanished into the darkness of space before the enemy could even react. The relay station was destroyed, cutting off communication between the Empire's forces. It was a small victory, but a crucial one. The Empire's leadership would now be scrambling to regain control. The fleet moved on to the next target, a supply depot that was crucial to the Empire's war efforts. Taking it out would disrupt their supply lines, making it harder for the Empire to sustain its forces. Once again, the attack was precise, and once again, the humans vanished before the Empire's forces could mount a response. But as they moved on to their final target, a military command center, their luck began to run out. The Empire had begun to scramble their defenses, and a small fleet of enemy ships had been dispatched to intercept them. It was a trap. The Empire had anticipated the humans' movements and was ready to retaliate. Ethan's heart raced as he realized the danger they were in. The plan had been working, but now they were facing a significant challenge. The humans couldn't afford to be caught. They needed to finish the mission and retreat before they were overwhelmed. "All ships, fall back," Ethan ordered, his voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. Take out the command center and move out. We can't stay any longer." The battle was intense. The enemy ships closed in, but the human fleet fought back with everything they had. It wasn't just about the mission anymore. It was about survival. The Phoenix and its allies fought with everything they had, knowing that their future depended on their ability to escape. As the final target was destroyed, the fleet made a swift retreat, their ships disappearing into the vastness of space. The mission had been a success, but at a cost. They had lost some ships, and the Empire now knew they were not to be underestimated. But Ethan didn't feel defeated. He felt the rush of victory. They had proven something important. Humanity had not just survived. They had struck first, and they had done it with intelligence, courage, and unity. The Great Gambit had shown the galaxy that humanity was no longer a weak and silent species. The message was clear. Earth had spoken, and no empire could stand against the unstoppable force that was humanity. The galaxy was shifting. The Great Gambit had proven to the empires that humanity was not a force to be taken lightly. Their calculated strikes had sent shockwaves across the universe, leaving the empire's leadership scrambling. Yet, with every victory came new challenges. The empires, though shaken, were not defeated, and they were now focused on one thing: retaliation. Ethan Pierce stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, staring out at the stars. The calm of space outside contrasted sharply with the tension inside. The fleet had returned to Earth, but it wouldn't be long before the Empire launched their counterattacks. Every move humanity made from here on would be met with even greater resistance. The balance had shifted, but the war was far from over. "We've hit them hard, but we can't stop now," Ethan said, his voice calm yet resolute. "The empires won't forgive us for what we've done." Lieutenant Lyra, who had become one of his closest advisors, stood beside him. "They're already planning their next move. We'll need to stay one step ahead, or we'll be crushed." Ethan nodded. The empires were vast, and their resources seemed endless. However, humanity had something the empires didn't: innovation, resilience, and a drive to protect their home and their future. These were the things that had helped them survive, and it was these same traits that would carry them forward. "Where do we go from here?" Lyra asked. "The Empire has already mobilized. They'll come for Earth soon enough. We hit them where they least expected," Ethan said, his mind already working through the options. "We don't just wait for them to come to us. We take the fight to their home fronts." The room fell silent as the crew absorbed his words. It was a bold move, one that could either cripple the empires or escalate the conflict beyond control. But Ethan knew one thing for certain: humanity could not afford to stand still. The next few days were spent planning, coordinating, and gathering intelligence. They didn't have the luxury of time. The empires had learned from their previous mistakes, and they were already preparing for the next battle. Humanity's best hope was to strike swiftly and decisively before the empires could recover their full strength. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the empire's leaders were in an uproar. The loss of their communications relay, supply depots, and military command center had exposed their vulnerabilities. The humiliation was palpable. The human resistance had taken a chunk out of their power, and now they were determined to make Earth pay for it. "Find the weakness," the supreme commander of the Empire ordered, slamming his fist onto the table in frustration. "Humanity has no business challenging us. We will not allow this." The Empire's forces began gathering in large numbers, preparing for a final push. Their fleets were vast, and their warships, though lacking the speed and precision of humanity's fleet, were formidable in terms of sheer power. If they could overwhelm humanity's defenses, they would have the advantage. Back on Earth, Ethan and his team were ready. They had located a critical weakness in the Empire's war machine, a high-ranking officer who had grown disillusioned with the Empire's leadership. This officer had access to sensitive information that could turn the tide of the war in humanity's favor. It was a risky operation, but the potential rewards were too great to ignore. "We infiltrate their stronghold, and get this officer on our side," Ethan said, outlining the plan. "Once we have him, we can extract the information we need to cripple the Empire's plans." It was a dangerous mission, and the odds of success were slim. But humanity had faced worse odds and come out victorious. Ethan's belief in his people was unshakable. They would do whatever it took to win. The team that would carry out the mission was handpicked for their skills and experience. They were a mix of soldiers, spies, and engineers, each bringing something vital to the operation. Among them was Captain Mara, a no-nonsense officer who had proven herself time and time again on the front lines. She was tasked with leading the infiltration team. As the fleet prepared to launch, Ethan took a moment to reflect on how far humanity had come. Just months ago, they had been fighting for survival. Now, they were launching deep strikes into the heart of Empire territory, striking fear into the very beings who had once believed they were invincible. "Stay focused," Ethan reminded his team as they gathered for the mission. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for freedom, for our future." The team moved swiftly. Their target was located on a remote planet deep within Empire-controlled space. The planet, known as Orcs, was a heavily fortified world, home to a high-ranking Imperial officer who had grown increasingly disillusioned with the Empire's brutality. His defection could turn the tide of the war, but the risks were immense. As the team infiltrated Orcs, they were careful to avoid detection. The Empire's forces were everywhere, and a single mistake could lead to disaster. The closer they got to their target, the more intense the tension became. Every moment was a potential risk, but the team remained steady. This mission wasn't just about gathering intelligence, it was about striking the blow to the Empire's heart. Hours later, they reached the officer's location. His base was hidden in a heavily guarded facility. Using a combination of stealth and cunning, the team managed to breach the defenses and locate the officer. They found him in a secluded room, a man weary from years of serving under an empire that no longer held his loyalty. "I want out," the officer said, his voice low but firm. "I've seen enough. I'm ready to join you." With the officer now on their side, the team quickly gathered the information they needed. It was a game changer. The officer's intel revealed critical weaknesses in the Empire's military infrastructure, weaknesses that could be exploited in future battles. With their mission a success, the team began the dangerous journey back to Earth, knowing that their actions had made a significant impact. The Empire's retaliatory strike would come soon enough, but now humanity had a chance to strike back with knowledge that could tip the scales in their favor. The war was far from over, but humanity had just taken another step toward victory. The air was thick with anticipation as humanity prepared for the final confrontation. The Empire had gathered its vast fleet, ready to crush the resistance once and for all. Earth, their home, would be the last battlefield. The stakes were higher than ever. Failure was no longer an option. But despite the looming threat, humanity's resolve was unbreakable. This time, they would fight not just to survive, but to ensure their future. Ethan Pierce stood on the deck of the Phoenix, gazing out into the vastness of space. The mission had grown more complicated, and the pressure was mounting. Every move now would be critical. They had no more time to waste, no more room for error. Earth's defenses were strong, but so were the Empire's fleets. "This is it," Ethan said quietly to himself. The hum of the ship's engines seemed to echo his thoughts. The time had come to put everything on the line. Beside him, Lieutenant Lyra spoke. "We're ready. The fleet is in position, and our intelligence gives us the edge we need. But we have to act fast. The Empire's retaliation will be brutal." Ethan nodded. The officer they had brought over from the Empire had provided crucial information. They now knew where to strike, where to hit the Empire the hardest. The Empire had relied too long on its overwhelming power, assuming that the sheer size of its forces would make any challenge seem futile. Humanity had shattered that illusion, and now they were going to press their advantage. "Are the troops in place?" Ethan asked, turning toward Lyra. Yes, sir. Our ground forces are ready, and we've secured the key positions. It's all set for the final assault. Ethan's eyes narrowed. There would be no second chances. The enemy's fleet was on its way, and they would have to hold the line until they could launch their strike. The defense of Earth was about to begin. The first signs of the Empire's arrival were unmistakable. In the distance, a series of large ships appeared on the horizon, mammoth warships that blotted out the stars. The Empire had come with everything it had. They intended to make Earth pay for defying them. As the enemy fleet approached, the Phoenix and Humanity's ships moved into position. There was no turning back now. The battlefield was set. "Let's show them what Earth can do," Ethan said, his voice steady and full of determination. His crew, standing ready at their stations, nodded in silent agreement. The first shots rang out across space. The Empire's ships unleashed devastating blasts, aiming for Earth's defenses. But humanity had prepared for this day. Their ships, though smaller, were faster and more maneuverable. The Empire's heavy ships struggled to keep up with the agile Phoenix and the rest of humanity's fleet. Ethan gripped the controls, his focus unshakable. The Phoenix dodged another barrage of fire, then retaliated with a precise strike at one of the enemy's forward ships. It was a calculated risk, but it paid off. The enemy ship faltered, its shields flickering as it veered off course. "Direct hit, Captain." Lyra called out, her voice filled with the adrenaline of battle. "Keep it up," Ethan replied. "We got one shot at this." In the midst of the chaos, humanity's ground forces were also engaged. Troops moved swiftly, battling against the Empire's invaders on Earth's surface. They fought not just for survival, but for the freedom of their planet. Each soldier understood the weight of the task at hand. They had come too far to lose now. The fight on Earth's surface was intense, but humanity was holding its own. The Empire's forces, while vast, lacked the unity and resolve that humanity had developed. It was not just advanced technology or numbers that gave humanity strength. It was their unwavering will to protect everything they had built. Back in space, the battle raged on. The Empire's fleet was taking losses, but they weren't backing down. The fight was becoming more desperate. The fate of Earth and its people hung in the balance. The Phoenix continued to lead the charge, striking down enemy ships with deadly precision. "All systems are holding," Lyra reported. "We've taken down 3 of their ships, but we still have more coming." "Not for long," Ethan said, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "We have the advantage. We just need to press harder." The Phoenix and its fleet surged forward, cutting through the Empire's forces. With each strike, humanity's confidence grew. They were not fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of every person, every family, every dream that the Empire had tried to crush. And then the moment came. Ethan received a message from Earth's military command. They had succeeded in securing the key positions on the planet. The Empire's ground forces were in retreat. "We've won on the surface," Lyra reported, a hint of relief in her voice. "The enemy is withdrawing." Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe. They had done it. The Empire's ground forces were in retreat, and the fleet was losing its grip on the battle. But there was still work to do. The final push would come from humanity's resolve. With the Empire's fleet now in disarray, the Phoenix led the final charge. The remaining enemy ships were no match for humanity's fury. One by one, they fell. The Empire had underestimated humanity's strength, and now they were paying the price. As the last of the Empire's ships crumbled, Ethan stood at the helm of the Phoenix, watching the battle unfold before him. The sky above Earth was clear once more. Humanity had won. It was a victory unlike any other. The galaxy would never forget the day when Earth stood up and said, "Enough." And for the first time in history, the empires learned that no force, no matter how great, could ever stand against the unstoppable will of humanity.